Hi, this is a video for those who are totally new to Digital Performer and somehow also totally new to recording. What we're going to be showing you here is opening Digital Performer, add a MIDI track, add audio tracks for external synths, but also for some of the synths that's bundled with DP. We'll be using MX4. I'll be using an external keyboard. In this case, the first one I'll be using is an old Emulator II, which is a sample keyboard. It's mono, so when we set it up, you will see I'll make a MIDI channel and one mono audio channel. Once we've done that, then I'll use the MIDI I just recorded to add another stereo synth, which will be a Nord Modular. And then last, we will use the same MIDI data to work with MX4, which comes bundled with DP. And last, I'll show you how to freeze or bounce that virtual synth into audio. So let's get going. The audio interface I'm going to use here now is a Autolight AVB MOTU interface hooked up to my Mac using USB. But first, let me show you a little bit about my setup. Well, first down here we have a Roland JP8080. Then over here at the bottom we have an EMU E6400 with a CD-ROM, the Yamaha CPX T3, and a Roland Sound Canvas SC7. Then there's hard to see a Yamaha TX7, two MOTU MTP AVs, and an Avid DD Design Rack 2. There's a 88 key MIDI controller, Nord Modular, a sequential circuits, drum tracks, and here we have a MOTU Autolight AVB. On top we have the Emulator II Plus. And over here we have two computers running Vienna Pro. Then we have some effects. We have two more MOTU interfaces, some mic pre's and other stuff. And then we have main computers with the RAID drives and two MOTU 1296 interfaces. And in the center we have a Apollo and a tuner, and down there we see another MOTU MIDI timepiece. And then we have Mackie controllers. And last, we have the monitors. They're JBL's, NS10s, and some NHT Pros, and Harman Kardon. Again, in this demo, I'll be using the Autolight AVB as the main interface to hook up the emulator and the Nord Modular to get the audio into DP. But as I have my studio monitors hooked up to my Apollo, so I'll be showing you how I'm using two interfaces with DP. Let's get started. Here I have a blank DP project. There's nothing in it. That's why you see here in the mixing board, there's no channels. In the tracks overview, there's no tracks either. Let me just go through these tabs really quick for you, those that are most important to you. First, we have the tracks, which is also known as the tracks overview and therefore mentioned as TO sometimes. We have the sequence editor, which is also known as SE. You will see it mentioned like that. You will see it referenced like that every once in a while. The MIDI editing window and the mixing board, that will be this. Now it changed because that's what we had open down here. So if I close this, we have the mixing board, we have MIDI, sequence editor or SE, the tracks overview, or TO. Those are the most important thing for you to get going right now. What we have showing here on the sidebars, we don't need that. I can move my cursor here into the middle and string them if I need to, or I can click the close windows. If I need to bring them back in here, I can always go here to the side. See, my cursor becomes a double arrow, and I can simply click and drag in, and from the bottom I can drag up And with the drop down menu here, you can change what it is we're seeing in these individual frames. Okay, first thing we're going to do is go to the project menu, add a track, and we'll add a MIDI track. I'll switch to the sequence editor. That's where we'll see most of our work being done. Over here on the sidebar, it's a little small. I can move my cursor here over these dots. It becomes a double arrow again. I can click and drag to the right to make it bigger. I can move my cursor here to the bottom, click and drag, and it becomes bigger. I can also use the zoom functions. There's many ways. You have shortcuts to zoom functions, but you also have the zoom functions here in the window, where we can click plus minus here to zoom in horizontally. Now note, when we're zooming horizontally, the side here doesn't change. You have to move your cursor here to do the horizontal change. However, the vertical change, if we click the plus here, you will see it will grow while you're clicking. In here, we have some information. First, what is it we will be seeing in the window? We'll be seeing notes. Here I have the input. You see there's an I in there for input, and it's set to any, and actually I cannot change it right now. So what any means is, this channel, when I record enable it and start recording, it will record any incoming MIDI data from any keyboard that I have attached to my system. I might have a keyboard that's attached through the Autolight's MIDI interface, regular old MIDI hookup, or I might have, and in addition to that, I could have a USB keyboard that's hooked up to a USB port. So those would be two different interfaces, but as long as it's set to any, it doesn't matter which one of these keyboards I'll be playing, DP will record any incoming MIDI data. Then we have the O, which is output. That's where we are going to route the information. The first thing I'm going to record is a piece of MIDI playing on the emulator and using the emulator sound, and record the emulator sound at the same time as recording the MIDI. First, I need to make sure I have set up the mono input from the Autolight. So we'll go to Studio and to Bundles. Bundles is Digital Performer's virtual patch bay. So once we get in here, let's move it in here, make it a little bigger. So see here we have inputs, and I only seeing the Universal Audio Apollo. I don't see the Autolight. Before I can do anything here, I need to make sure that DP will see the Autolight. I'll go to Setup, Configure Audio System, and Configure Hardware Driver. There we'll see the Autolight, and we also have the Universal Apollo here. So what I'll do is select Autolight, scroll down, hold down my Command key, and select the Universal Audio Apollo as well. As you can see down here, and as you saw before, I have multiple other MOTU interfaces, and if I wanted to use them in this project, I would simply hold down my Command key and click on them as well. I'll set my master device to Universal Audio Apollo, sample rate 4800. I'll change the clock mode to Universal Audio Apollo using the internal clock. My buffer size to 1024. It could be a little high depending on if you're monitoring through a interface where you have latency issues. You might want to lower this to maybe 124 or maybe down to 64. But if you're using MOTU interfaces, you either have the AVB mixer for serial latency monitoring, or you have QMix for some of you older MOTU interfaces. As I have two interfaces here, I will leave the host buffer set to 2. If I only had one interface, I would change it to 1. If I had 3, change it to 3, and so on. Now I'll go back to Bundles, and we will now see the Autolight is showing up here. I need to add a mono input for the emulator. So I click Add. And now here you have the Autolight AVB. Now we need to know that first one is microphone 1. Second one, audio in 2, is microphone 2. Third, audio in 3 is guitar 1. Fourth is audio in 4, which is guitar 2. I hooked up the emulator using a direct box so I can match the level to the microphone input, and wired the DI into microphone input 1, so that will be this one. So we set up a mono track for microphone channel 1. Now I can just double click on the name here and change it to EMU, and you'll see in a moment when we get to the audio channel that this will be the name we'll be looking for. So let's go back to DP, go to the projects menu, add a mono track. First thing I'll do is rename the track. So I'll hold down the Option key or the Alt key and double click on the name and rename it to EMU. It's good practice to learn from the outset to name your tracks before you start recording, because your audio files will be named after the track name you gave them, instead of having audio 1, audio 2, audio 3, so on and so forth, which can make it harder for you to manage your project later in time if your files should become detached or you need to use them for something else. So it's much easier to start renaming your tracks first before you start recording. As input, we'll change that to EMU. Output should be the output of the Apollo, because that's where we have the monitors hooked up. And that has this long name, so we can go back to Studio, to Bundles. Now go to the tab called Output, and we'll see output 1, 2 of the Universal Apollo is a stereo bus, and we can just double click here and let's change this to call it main out. And you saw immediately the name changed over here. So let's close the bundles, and we are ready to record. We just need to arm the EMU track as well. The tempo up here is set to 120 BPM. You can change it. You can simply just click and move your mouse up and down to change the BPM, or you can double click in here and simply type a number. I also want to have a metronome or a click to work with, and to have a click we need to turn on click, which is this button up here, so it needs to be lit for the click to work. Now we can change the sound and the volume of the click by double clicking on it to get to the preferences, and you can see here where we're hearing the click. We're hearing the click on the main out, which is fine. And here you can select which sound should be for the accented click and what should be for the normals. And right now it's set to, as we can see here, four. And the main click is a little louder than the 3 other dots. So let's go out here. We can use a countdown. We won't use it this time, but if you need like a 2-bar countdown before DP starts record, you'll simply click this count off button there. If you want to change the number of bars for countdown, you can double click on it, open the preferences, and you can now change how many measures you want your count off to be. And not only measures, even beats, so you could make it totally customizable. So you have so many ways you can customize your beat. So you have very many ways that you can customize your beat. So you have very many ways that you can customize your metronome as well. Let's zoom out a little bit. We're armed, we're ready to record. Let's hit it. Okay, I was a little late on that. Let's make this a little larger. I don't have to go anywhere to change or manipulate my MIDI recording. I don't have to go to the MIDI tab here to make any changes. I have the same view here that you can grab any one single note and change it, the length, and so on and so forth. However, sometimes it is handy to go here because you have a bigger view, and also we have the controls down here. What we're seeing down below here is the on velocities, and you can change what you're seeing. There's so much things you can see here. So if I wanted to change the on velocity of the very first note here, I would simply go down here and grab that handle and move it up, move it down. Did I want to, you can see the overall volume here. Here's one note that sticks out a little bit. I could take it down if I wanted it to. If I want to grab a whole bunch of notes and bring them up, we can do that. So let's just cancel that. Okay, let's move the cursor in here. If I hold down the control key when I have my cursor moved right over the Viper and click and drag down, you can see I zoom in and move it up, I zoom out. And I'm a little late. We can start quantizing. What we could also do is simply just select all and hold down the command key while dragging all the notes. So it seems that I am pretty much on time on all following. So go back to the sequence editor. Now I want to. Now let's go back. Now let's go back to the sequence editor, and I want to move the recorded audio with the same amount. So first I'll move this up a little bit. Again, move my cursor over the Viper. You can see it changes icon of the cursor. Hold down my control key. Hold down my control key. Click the mouse button and drag down. Now it seems cool. So we'll just zoom out. And if we go to the mixing board now, you will see we have two channels here. We have the MIDI and we have the audio channel with the EMU. And let's take them out of record. And we can hear it play. Before we're playing, I'll just add a master fader track. Take that down a little bit. That's just something I know I have to do when I do this screen recording. So let's play. And take out the metronome. So that's perfect. We will save this. We'll go back to the sequence editor. Now I can drag this up. I don't need it this big anymore. And as these disappears up there, I can use this handlebar to move up and down to see my MIDI notes in the view. Now I want to add the Nord. And that's a stereo synth. And I hooked that up to guitar 1, 2 for stereo input. So before we add the stereo track, let's go back to Studio and open our bundles window. Go back to the inputs, add an input, and we will change this to a stereo input. And as we remember, guitar 1 and 2 is actually 3 and 4, so we'll just double click there in 3. So left, right as the stereo will now be handled. Input 3 will be our left channel, input 4 will be our right channel. Double click on the name, and I'll call it Nord. Go back, project, add track, add a stereo audio track. We will change the name. Just hold down the option key and click on the name, and we will call it Nord. As my input, it already selected Nord as stereo because you don't see the input of the EMU because DP is smart enough. This was a stereo track and it needs a stereo input, so it disregards any mono inputs I have out there like the EMU, so the only thing we saw was the Nord. Output is set to main out, so that's perfect. Last thing we need to do is we need to tell the MIDI up here that what I want you to play is the Nord. So let's move this back. Arm the Nord track. And let's hit record. Perfect. So let's take it out of record, go to our mixing board, can scoop it over here, unmute the EMU track, let's go back and hit play. Okay, so we got that. Last, I want to add MX4. So let's go back to the sequence editor. Now we'll go to project menu. We'll go to the project menu and add an instrument track and select MX4. Move it in here. Let's go to the strings and select the Juno strings. Okay, now we need to select and tell that MX4 will be played by this MIDI data we recorded. So we'll go to the output and choose MX4 as the receiver. If I go to the mixing board, you'll actually see down here at the bottom, same thing, that we can select where this MIDI data is going. MX4. We'll move MX4 over here next to the MIDI data as it looks nicer. So there's nothing to record right now. So let's take these down a little bit so we just can listen to MX4. Let's mute this. Here we go. So that's MX4 played by the MIDI. Let's bring back the EMU, which is our hero, and the Nord, and let's all of them play at the same time. Nice. So we haven't even added any effects yet, but just adding those more wavy, fluent, those more airy sounds just gives a nicer, wider perspective and more depth in the stereo. Now I might actually let's add some strings from Mark V. But before we do that, as you know, MX4 now is only played by the MIDI. There's nothing, we didn't record anything. So before we move on, let's print this track. And the fastest way we can print a track with DP is not using freeze tracks, because that's a real-time process. The fastest way you can go is using bounce to disk. In this case, we will go to the tracks window, and I'll make a selection. Here's the MIDI. Can make it a little bit bigger. It's a little too much. Now, as you heard, MX4 was still playing when I stopped the playing, which means that there's some release that still needs to fade out before I can stop my recording. And what we're doing right now, making a selection, if I made a selection here and bounce this, the recording will stop right here at the end. So we need a little bit more. So I hold down the command key and start dragging over these two tracks, the MIDI track and MX4. When we are bouncing, DP will only bounce what is selected here, disregarding anything else here that might be play enabled. So I selected this. I made a little space for having a tail here. So we'll go to File, Bounce to Disk. We will make a broadcast wave in stereo, 24-bit. We will add it to the sequence using the main out. And we will call this MX4 print. Hit OK. And here we have the audio. So MX4 is now turned into audio. Right now it will still play here as MIDI. So we will take MX4 track out of play enabled. And now it's only audio. So we can go back here. Go to the mixer. Now we only see MX4, so we will drag this out here. So we have the sidebar. Change this to our track selector and select the rest of the tracks. Take this MX4 print, move it over next to the Nord. And we muted MX4, we'll mute MIDI. And let's go to the beginning and listen. Perfect. So all that is played. Now say I actually want to add Mark V. So we'll go to Project, Instrument Track, MOTU, Mark V Stereo. We will find our sounds. Go strings. We'll do a full string section. We'll do a quartet. Let's do a string ensemble here. There we go. Now we need to unmute our MIDI, change the routing of our MIDI now to Mark V. So the MIDI channel will go to Mark V. In the sequence editor, we see here the MIDI is going to Mark V. If we go to the beginning, we can go here and just mute the 3 audio tracks, and let's hear if it's playing. So that's perfect playing. So we can get the 3 audio channels in here now. Sounds a little hot, so let's take it down a little bit. Now you saw what happened here was when we started, the level was here to 0 dB and it flew up here to plus 6 dB when we started playing. This is because in DP9 MOTU introduced what's called event chasing. So to avoid that, I would simply go to the very beginning of the sequence and I would record a volume automation and simply bring that down. So we let it sit there, stop it, take it out of automation record. So let's see how that plays with Mark V. And if we open Mark V, you can see now it's using the information that we recorded as our MIDI volume. It was simply doing the full volume because we hadn't recorded any volume information, so DP was just saying, okay, we have full volume, so the instrument needs to go full volume from here on. Okay, we got that. Now I want to get this into audio. So I'll take Mark V, I'll just move it over here just because it's easier for me to do that. Go back to the tracks overview. And now you can see over here there's some MIDI data. That's where I had the volume recorded. So I have Mark V here on this channel. So again, I'll hold down the command key. I'll make a selection of the MIDI data and Mark V. Go to bounce to disk. We call it Mark V print. Broadcast wave, stereo 24-bit, and add to sequence. And hit OK. And there we go, we have the Mark V print. Go back to mixing board. Let's open all the channels. Move it over here. Let's mute the Mark V channel and the MIDI channel so we only have play enabled all our printed audio channel. Let's go back to the beginning and play. So that's MIDI recording with Digital Performer for beginners. Now let's try to add some reverb. So I want to add reverb specifically to Mark V. And in order to add reverb, there's a couple of ways we can do that in DP. If I just want to add reverb into this track, I can insert a reverb onto the track by simply go find, we will do Proverb here. Let's keep it floating. Let's mute everything else but Mark V. Go back. Now we can see the mix here is 100%, so it's 100% wet. So if we play, we will hear only the reverb. So we can bring it back. And here's only the dry. And then we add some. And there's a nice reverb for you. So that's one way to do it. But if I wanted to use the same reverb on MX4, of course, we could just move it over. We can actually click on it, hold down the Option key and drag it over, and it'll just duplicate itself. But now I have two versions of Proverb. So if I want to change the reverb, use a different type of reverb, now I have to change two of them. So a much better way and much more efficient way of doing that is let's just click on that and hit delete, take it out, delete this one. is using a bus to send to an aux track. So we'll go to Project, Add, and add an aux track. Aux tracks looks like all the other tracks. Let's add Reverb. Now you'll see nothing is loaded here. First thing we need to do is we haven't told it where is the audio input coming from. So we'll just click here and go to New Mono Bundle, and we have to scroll way down to where we have everything that starts with bus. And in this case we have no buses yet, so we can start with bus number 1. And you see now this becomes enabled. Then we will select this send here and send this to bus number 1. Bring it back a notch. We will take bus number 1 over here, MX4 as well. Bring it back. We can bring this back a little bit. And if we play, let's get Reverb up here. You see 100% wet, of course, because now we have the volume of the reverb over here. So let's find a nice long... The factory is actually very great in Reverb. It's a very great reverb. So let's go to Europe, Classical Cathedral, the back pew in the center. Let's play again. Let's bring in MX4. And that's the reverb you're listening to. Let's mute MX4 actually and bring in the EMU instead. Let's just mute this send. Add the send to the EMU. Bring down the volume. Let's play again. Very nice. And let's bring in the Nord and MX4 as well. And if you want to go a little bit more crazy with this, let's add a chorus effect to the reverb just to give it some shimmer. And we'll use the same practice. I could insert a chorus here right after, but I want to have better control of the blend and the volume. So I'll add another aux track. Now I need a new bus. I'll click here, go down to New Mono Bundle, and select bus number 2 right now. And on here, we'll go MOTU, analog chorus in stereo, mono to stereo. So there we have that. Then we'll add a send to bus number 2 from the reverb. Let's just take these two out right now. So let's go back and listen to the whole thing again. So that's MIDI recording with DP. Have fun recording. Remember, there's a lot of potential in DP. It's mind-blowing. Sometimes you can hit a roadblock. Check the manual, try it out, look at YouTube videos, and if you like what I do, subscribe to my videos. You can send me email or comments on the YouTube page as well, and I look forward to interact with you. Thank you.